Oh my, oh my, oh my, gentlemen.
Is
It
is
is
it real? Is this
Saturday,
real?
August 5, and it is
Man,
real 2023, and the PRT is back in the house. Gentlemen, happy Sabbath. Good to
we
see you both.
Happy
listen. We
Sabbath.
are
Happy
back.
Sabbath.
We are back.
Wow,
Wow, it has been a busy summer, man. But we are here.
summer.
We are live, and we are just ready to see our family friends here at the PRT. Man, I tell you, listen, Pastor Paul, man, you just came
Hey,
back, man. I'm looking on Facebook, Doc, and you came back from
oh,
Thailand.
yeah, brother. We had the privilege to spend some time in South Korea, in Guam, and in Thailand. We were in Bangkok for a day or so, and then in a little town, not a little town, a good sized town called Chiang Mai, and it was a wonderful,
Wow,
wonderful experience. Um, yeah, Thailand. Yeah, good stuff. Good place. Great trip.
praise God.
But good to be
Good
home.
to
Good to
see
be home. I
you.
could have spent another week or two out there, though. I would not have minded. Good stuff.
I don't think
Yeah,
your
yeah.
members will be too happy with that one.
That's right. That's right.
Hey, my wife told me the other day. I came back, not today, but last week, when my first sermon back, and the
Hmm.
folk. My wife said, "Man, the folk are saying pastor should take vacation more often. He came back and he preached today, boy." Da, 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 da. Like, that's right. Say it
Yeah.
again. Say it again.
Yes,
Oh
yes,
You
yes.
know.
my.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Listen, I am just so excited to be back. You know, although we're back together, you shared that it's been a very busy summer. I'm actually out in Phoenix, Arizona,
Ah,
supporting a good friend of the family. They're graduating today, and but I couldn't miss Pastors Roundtable. So here I am on
all
with
right.
my boys, with my fellow colleagues. We're just so excited. To those of you who are watching, some of you have been, it's been a long time. I saw Daphne put in the chat, it's been a long time. And it has been a long time. Even I'm saying it's been a long time. So just put in
Well,
the chat what you would like to say to us. Share with us your greeting, or maybe some of you are like, where you been? How come we took so long? Just put in the chat so we can feel the love. We want to feel the love from those who are viewing here on Pastors Roundtable.
that
Hey, I
sounds
want to
good,
shout
man.
out. I see my conference, Southeastern Conference technology director, in the chat, Arnaldo Cruz. God bless you guys. He says, "Listen, man, God bless you. God bless Southeastern Conference. We want to welcome those of you that are watching on the Southeastern Conference platform this afternoon. I think they're going to be watching. I think it's on the Facebook channel. I don't think we're on the YouTube channel.
Yes,
But
the
listen,
Facebook.
we are
Yes,
excited
Facebook.
to have Southeastern in the house. If you're part of my home conference, it's part of Southeastern. If you would just drop that in the chat and let us know where you are from today, we're excited to have you with us.
I
Hey,
see
listen.
Rona Barnett is right there in the
Yeah.
chat. I see Rona Barnett, and also I do see. Oh, we have our faithful supporter, Sister Cindy P. Sister
Sister
Cindy
Cindy
P.
P,
Is that name familiar, Pastor Paul?
it has a very familiar ring to it,
Listen,
and I like it. I like it.
it looks
Excellent,
good.
excellent.
Southeastern Conference, they said, is in the house. Pastor Wade, go ahead.
That's right. That's right. South Central Conference it's on their YouTube page and their Facebook page, and it's on our Pastors Roundtable page. Daphne, I just want you to know it is hot out here. I mean, you just walk out the door and it's like, oh my goodness, you want to run back in. But praise be to God, it's not humid. It's just hot. So we praise God for that. Listen, guys,
Allegheny East in the
I
house today.
I know we've
Okay,
been away
Allegheny
for a
East.
while. I know we've been away for a while, but I don't know about you, but this camp meeting season, which is the reason why we took a break, this camp meeting season was off the chain,
My,
as they
my,
would
my,
say.
my, my, my. Wow. Hey, if you went to camp meeting this summer, or you watched a camp meeting, but let us know which camp meetings you watch. If you watch more than one, or you went to more than one, put that in the chat. We'd be very interested to know where you were at during this camp meeting season. So throw that in the chat for us. We'd love to
Yes,
see that.
yes,
All right. Hey, but
yeah.
listen, before we go any further, Dr. Henry, listen, man, we got 53 people. 54 people. 59 people. It keeps changing. 59 people watching right now, but we need those 59 of you to do something. Dr. Henry, tell us what
Yes.
that is, man.
Listen, now it's the time to share. I want you to share as you never shared before. I want you to just
Mercy.
share this feed, share it, share it, share it, share it. Listen, go through your whole contact list and just share. Just keep on sharing because this conversation is going to be amazing. Look, I couldn't miss this conversation. Look, right now, you can see I'm not in my normal spot. I am here at the Florida conference doing a part of this convention here. And I had to be here because this conversation is going to be hot. So please share, and then share some more.
Share some more. All right. All right. There we go.
Awesome. Yes.
All right. So let's talk about it, guys. What's on the table? Roger, you were getting us there. We talked about the camp meeting season. Help me out. Help us out, Doc.
Well,
What's on the table today?
We're seeing so many tell us where where they watched or where they went for camp meeting. But there was a particular camp meeting that kind of fired up the internet, I would have to say. And actually, I was just truly mesmerized when I listened. The facts, the information that was being shared there. We are so glad to have the speaker who shared at the Southwest Region Conference camp meeting, Dr. Wintley Phipps. He is in the house today, and we're going to be talking about the sermon that he shared. And I'm not going to say anything else because I know that Dr. Dion is going to tell us what's on the table today, or who's at the table today. Talk a little bit about that.
Listen. Well, listen, you already gave the spoiler, Dr. Wade. You gave the
I
spoiler.
know.
Put it out there. He did it. He got it. He got it.
I know. I was so excited, man. I was just so excited.
Hey, listen, that's all right, man. Look, you already mentioned him, Dr. Wintley Phipps. What else can we say about him? Renowned singer, pastor, preacher, over the Dream Academy. We've seen Dr. Phipps throughout the ages, and he is still just relevant, doing powerful work. We appreciate his ministry. And as you said, Pastor Wade, at camp meeting, I mean, what a powerful word, spreading these thoughts that we need to really think about our church and think about it differently. And here's some questions that we got to wrestle with. And I mean, he's been on a lot of podcasts already, right? And I'm just so happy that he's here with us today. And here again, we have none other than Pastor Wintley Phipps.
All right. Hello. All right. Hey. There he is. There he is in the flesh.
Yeah, how are you all? Good to hear your voices and good to see you in the flesh too.
Yes, indeed. It is so good to see you, Elder. Wow, you have been the talk of the town for a long time now. As somebody mentioned, we've been seeing you not just at that Southwest Region camp meeting, but we've seen you on a number of different podcasts already discussing some of the things that we want to dig in today. I hope that maybe by the end of this program that we will be able to put some links up to some of the other interviews that you have done, so that maybe some of the things that we don't get to today, that others will have a chance to go and to pick that apart just a little bit more. But just before we get started, everybody, we want to begin with a word of prayer. And then Dr. Phipps, for anybody, I don't know anybody who's watching today who has no clue who you are, but we're going to give you just a brief moment after we pray to just tell us a little bit about you and where you are and what you're doing now, just as a point of a little bit more introduction. But let's begin with a word of prayer, and then we will give you that moment. Father, we thank you for the opportunity that we have to come together today and to have this discussion. We ask that you would be all up in it today, and that when we are done, that we might see Jesus just lifted up a little bit higher, that we might come to know you a little bit more and to love you a whole lot more. For we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
All right, Dr. Phipps, tell us, some people know you as a singer, some people know you as a preacher, some people know you as a friend to the celebrities and the stars. Some of us know you as a friend of presidents and all that kind of stuff. Give us I don't know, give us about 90 seconds or so, 60 seconds or so. Just give us a picture, a snapshot of where you are now, what you're doing now, any other projects that you might have in play. Just tell us a little bit about what life is like for the Wintley Phipps in August 2023.
Well, first of all, people have always asked me that question. Are you a singer who preaches or a preacher who sings? And, and God gave me a little phrase that I've used. I'm a full service communicator.
I love it.
I love it. I love it.
So
Full service.
the real goal is to communicate. And I have been doing ministry and pastoral ministry since 1976. I was brought on by Elder Luther Palmer into the Allegheny East Conference in 1976. And I have pastored in 45 years. I've lived in 2 cities, which is crazy in the
Wow.
Adventist ministry.
Wow.
And
Mercy.
I've lived in 2 cities primarily because, and I'm not discouraged or bitter or anything like that, I've never really received any invitations or calls to pastor in other cities or other places,
Mhm.
which and I now see God arranged it that way so I could live in 2 cities. And the church where I pastor now, the Palm Bay Seventh-day Adventist Church, I have been the pastor there for over 21 years in one church, which
Wow.
is another thing that's rare. And But I travel a lot. My church is very supportive of my ministry. I could not do what I do without them. The members of the Palm Bay Church are my heart, and
That's good.
they see me not just as a pastor of the church, but the pastor from the church,
Wow.
which is which
Okay.
is awesome because they are sending me out to the world as their
Come
emissary.
on.
Oh,
And I'll
wow.
say one last thing. Whenever I take over a church, I usually give the churches the same speech. And I say to them, if you see a beautiful woman and ask her to marry you, to sit her down the morning after the first honeymoon night and say, okay, now, baby, all that you used to do that
Mm,
made you so attractive to me,
mm.
I want you to stop it.
My Lord.
Ay,
I don't think that'd be wise.
ay, ay,
And then I
ay.
said to the church, when you heard there was this marriage about to take place between my ministry and the ministry of this church, to sit me down the morning after the honeymoon night and say, now, Pastor,
Oh, wow.
all that you used to do that made you so attractive to us, we want you to stop
I,
it.
Mm,
I
I
said,
mm.
I
see
don't
what you
think
did
that'd be
there, Doc.
And then I would say to them, but if you just let me do whatever God calls me to do, let me go wherever God calls me to go, I
Hmm.
believe my ministry will continue to blossom and the ministry of our church will flourish beyond our wildest dreams. And every
Mm.
time
Amen.
churches say, Pastor, we're going to covenant with you. And this is the beauty of it. This is the beautiful part. They say, if there's any slack, we'll pick it up.
Come on.
That's
Wow.
In other words,
that's
Yes.
we're going to step up. We're going to be a working church. And so
oh my goodness.
I'm just sharing so much, but one thing, when we celebrated our 20th anniversary at the church,
Hmm.
my first elder put in the celebration booklet an experience that I had forgotten. He was saying how this, from his perspective, the love and the trust and the commitment that the church has for me and that I have for the church. And he told of an experience how a member had called him uh, from the hospital to say that she needed a visit. Well, the elders visited her, but she said she wanted a visit from the pastor.
Uh-huh.
He said, and he called me and told me, he told her that I was out of town. I was actually in some meetings in Washington, D.C. And then he wrote in the booklet something I had forgotten. He said, what happened next shocked him. He said, Pastor Phipps flew in from Washington, paid a visit to this lady in the hospital, and then flew back to Washington. And then he wrote, I will let you be the judge of his commitment to this church.
There you go.
Wow.
There you go.
Woo.
Yeah.
But what
Yeah.
a
Yes.
That's good.
testimony. Like literally, I
Yes.
had forgotten that had happened. But so I thank you for letting me pay my tribute and share my kudos for an awesome church that God has allowed me to pastor for 21 years.
That's
Awesome.
Wow.
My
phenomenal.
goodness.
That's phenomenal.
That's powerful stuff, Doc. That's powerful stuff, man. Um, Listen, you have been on a lot of podcasts, not just after the sermon. You've been on interviews, and the Lord has blessed you, to really travel and to be exposed to different venues and to express ideas and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um, this sermon that you preached at Southwest was powerful, and these are some thoughts you've been portraying throughout the years.
Yeah.
Before that, you were on the Pastors Roundtable. I think not you weren't on the Pastors Roundtable, but we had guests on the Pastors Roundtable to address conflict of interest. And so we have just been curious about conflict of interest. Since then that kind
Yeah.
of generated conversation. And so I wanted to ask you, with this conflict of interest, I know you addressed a lot of things, but let's just deal with conflict of interest right now.
Ooh, you went for the
um,
jugular right out the gate,
I just
Doc.
went for it, man. By the way, listen,
Well,
what a
you
powerful
probably need
message, man.
you probably need to set it up in terms of
Yeah, you
what
still on the runway.
what yeah what the real issues are, and then I can you lay out the issues and then I'll address them.
Okay, all right. Well, this might be a little easy, but so as far as conflict of interest, what is the standard to attain when we talk about conflict of interest? What is that standard to attain as far as conflict of interest is concerned? So what's this whole thing about conflict of interest, and what's the standard to attain? What is that bar that we need to attain when we talk about conflict of interest?
Hmm.
Well, again, everyone has their own perspective on this. Um, some leaders, even amongst their leadership, there's a different perspective. The perspective that has surfaced recently that a lot of people are talking about is that, uh, like it is in corporate America, by and large, uh, when you work for a company, if you create anything on company time or any work product you generate in corporate America belongs to that company. It's not yours. Well, there are some who believe that that same standard needs to be applied to pastors.
Mm.
Hmm.
And literally, there are legal minds within the church who believe that every sermon you write belongs to the church because
Oh
you're an
my.
employee. Yeah, you're an employee of the church. And as opposed to corporate America, where you can take a vacation, they don't see you having any vacation time because you work 24/7, 365 days a year for the church. And so their perspective, these legal minds, their perspective is anything you create whether it's on your vacation, whether it's you don't have downtime.
Mm.
You can't go off and create something. Anything you create while you are an employee of the church actually belongs to the church. And they also believe that because of their generosity and their largesse, they won't come back at you for the sermons.
Oh, okay. Wait. Let me just clarify if I may. So the sermons that I write, the
Yeah,
PowerPoint slides that I create,
right.
the Sabbath school committee training workshop that I create, the
Yes.
okay, let's go down your alley, Doc Phipps. The
Yeah.
song that you write, the
Yeah.
CD that you put together. Wait. No, not the song that you write and compose. Can I throw that in there for my
Yeah.
musicians out there?
Yeah.
That you
Yeah.
write and compose.
Yeah.
Um, whether you do it in your office or whether you do it on the beach at and on Tahiti on
Exactly.
vacation, all
Mm.
of
Exactly.
that intellectual property
Yes.
belongs to the organization.
Right.
Now,
Now, you know that's not what I'm saying, and
but
I
that's what,
want
yeah.
you I want you to help me here because you heard this presented clearly. So you need to share what you heard. So if for some reason I'm not sharing it correctly, please correct that. But there are some legal minds within the church that is the position they take, and but there are other minds in the church who push back against that,
Mhm.
uh, and so maybe you can just share a little bit about what you actually heard from the mouth of a legal mind in the church.
Well, I'm trying to remember because we had one of those legal minds right here on Pastors Roundtable. So
Okay.
those of
Yeah.
you that have watched Pastors Roundtable and watched what was it in was it March or
It
No,
April?
was
no, no. It was
June,
May.
June
It was
3rd,
May. June.
Oh,
It was
June
June 3rd.
3rd. So the June 3rd
Mhm.
episode, we heard one particular take on this that happened to be the highest legal mind in the denomination, at least as far as the GC and North America, um, speak to this. Now, I don't think that it was spoken to as directly in this level on the show as it
Yeah.
has been spoken
In
to as
other places.
directly as
Hmm.
workers or as employees. Um,
Right.
But
so
but my,
But
yeah,
my
what
we
did he
question
referenced
is,
say?
that show.
What did he
I was
say?
gonna
It did it. Am I saying something different than what he said?
No, that as far as my recollection on the presentation that I received, yes, you have stated that accurately. And I
Okay.
just want to emphasize for our audience what you did say, and that he pulled back is that while they said technically those sermons do belong to the organizations, the sermons out of any of the other intellectual property, they have granted us permission to keep as our own. They have given us that to say that if we were to take our sermons and put them in a book or print them in a devotional or something, that the denomination would say, okay, we will allow you to have that as yours and yours alone, and we'll stay away from that. But that and dissertations was the other thing, a dissertation that you write while in the employ of the church, that those two items were the things that were articulated. The denomination would not take any claim to per
Right.
their prerogative.
And
Throw
no,
but
that
and
out
but
there.
per their generosity,
Yes.
per
but
their
what is the
generosity.
line? What is the
Uh,
line that we should what is the line though that we should toe when it comes to conflict of interest? For example, could I heard that show. I wasn't on the show, but I was watching. I came back and I watched. We were away on vacation, their anniversary and so forth. And when I was watching that show, I had so many questions. I said, "What is going on?" When I heard some of the I guess the rules that we had within our denomination. And so I started to think about, okay, Do other denominations have this same type of standard? I'm thinking, let's go back, and I know laws were different and everything. Was Ellen White paid by the church, and did that same standard fit her? I mean, so I just want to drop that in, Doc. So
Well,
my question is, though,
I'll speak
yeah,
to
go
that
ahead.
a little bit. Yeah, I was going to say I'll
Go.
speak to that a little bit. If there is one person who historically has pushed back against that perspective, it was Ellen White herself.
Mhm.
Mm.
She came
From
real
from
strongly
all
too.
all the writings that I've seen, she basically says that this is wrong. It is not in the church's purview and role to take writing. Well, you can imagine, but to take things that are written by pastors and claim ownership over them. That was her position.
But
Mm. Mm.
what is this line that we should kind of walk softly with conflict of interest? Because I guess the conflict of interest does, the principle of it, I guess, serves a purpose and it's important. What do you think that line is, that principle that we need to watch as we do ministry creatively?
He's
Well, well, I think before we get to the line, I think this really needs to be cleared up because it has placed it places a damper and it discourages creativity. If pastors get wind of that anything that I create I don't own,
Mm,
then it really puts a damper on the creative impulses and the creative spirit. Why would you want to even try to bother creating anything? And that comes back to what I was talking about in the sermon. It's kind of like being in the military, you know. So you don't create new weapons. You just fight with the weapons that you were given. And so we have a big problem in not encouraging innovation and creativity to the point where I texted a pastor this morning. We were texting back and forth, and God gave me a quote years ago. Because you're right, Dion. These are things that I've been saying for years. It just kind of exploded. But we are part of a system that seems to reward mediocrity and punish
ouch.
creativity.
Mm.
Ay, ay, ay.
Mm.
We reward mediocrity and we punish creativity. If you go to workers' meetings and pat the president on the back and call him chief, uh,
Ouch.
and better and better still, if you play golf with him, you
Woo,
Oh
know,
oh
boy.
man.
you have a path to some big church opportunities to pastor.
Yep.
Mm.
So,
And
so
I don't know. Maybe I'm saying too much, but that's what I've seen through the years.
So, but that's
El- El-
something that is we would suggest is probably typical when we say phrases like "it's all about who you know," right? So that's not something that's unique just to Adventism or any
Yeah,
particular institution. That's a
yeah.
people thing. That's okay. I got it.
But
but
there's a
I
problem.
want to I want to drill in just a little bit more, Elder. First of all,
Okay.
I applaud your courage to share. I guess over the years, you gain a certain strength to say what needs to be said
Oh my.
in light of this. But all of a sudden, even in the conversation we had on June the 3rd, there was an implication that it wasn't just only the pastor that had to worry about the conflict of interest. It was
That's
also
right.
our church
Mm,
boards and our leaders in our local church. So
Oh
I
wow.
wanted to kind of I don't know if you have any insight into that. I mean, you talked about the pastor and the creativity that the pastor now has to have to be concerned about whether he wants to be creative or not. But how can a church now think about the unique ministries that it wants to participate in, and now begin to wonder, am I crossing a line, as Doc Henry was sharing?
Yeah. Well, I don't think you have to worry, the church has to worry about crossing a line. I think what needs to be very, very clear, whether it's the church board or the pastor, is that you are committed to the third angel's message to this organization. You're committed to advancing its interests, and anything that would mitigate against that, you will not support. So, for example, I have a quote God gave me, and through this conversation, you hear a lot of little quotes. God speaks to me in quotes. He speaks to me in quotes that He gives me that are creative and unusual. Like, you don't have to compromise to be recognized. God
Come
gave
on.
me that when a teenager, and I've kind of lived by that. But I have another little quote that the church is to be challenged, never condemned. And so that's what I live by. So when you hear me speaking, I believe that I want you to hear me challenging the
That's good.
systems, but you will never, ever hear me condemning the church. As a matter of fact, if you are part of an organization that says that it is heresy to challenge it, you're part of an organization that will not last.
Mm-hmm.
You have to look at all of your systems, whether it be financial systems, marketing systems, um, outreach systems, nurturing systems. For example, I'll give you one that I challenge the church on all the time, and I've done my best to deal with it on a personal level, and that is, it is amazing to me that with uh, all our theological information that we have packaged into Bible studies, and it is voluminous, we do not have one series of studies on helping members to grow to become more like the character of Jesus.
Wow. Wow.
I mean, you will find everything on all our unique doctrines. As a matter of fact, I heard one old preacher say to me one day, that's because we don't focus on that because all other churches can focus on that.
Mm.
We have to focus
Mm.
on what makes us unique.
My Lord.
Well, but for me, from my perspective, it's one of the reasons that we're not growing in terms of evangelism, because we don't even offer opportunities in study, in resources, to help people grow to be more like Jesus. That's crazy to me that you can go on decade after decade after decade. So I speak up to try to challenge it. I actually went and built my own series of studies on that. It's a series called Perfecting Me, Becoming More Like Christ, More Like Jesus. And it's built around 2 Peter chapter 1, verses 5 through 7. I read in Ellen White's writings where she said that in 2 Peter chapter 1, verses 5 through 7, God gave to Peter to give to us his divine plan for the development of Christian character. I didn't
Mm.
even know there was a plan. I didn't learn that in the seminary. I've never heard that from any periodical, uh, any of our papers, anything. And so that was amazing to me that there is a plan that God gave us to grow, to be more like Jesus. And so I wrote a book and a study series around 2 Peter chapter 1, verses 5 through 7. And to your faith add virtue, virtue, knowledge, self-control, patience, uh, holiness, respect for what is sacred, kindness, and love. And those 8 critical dimensions of character God says He wants us to have. And I wrote the book and I took it to our publisher. Yeah, it's no longer in business, the Review and Herald. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And they said to me, "This is amazing. They didn't have anything like that." They said it's biblically sound, spirit of prophecy based. We want to publish the book, and can we fly you up and have a meeting with you? And they flew me up to Hagerstown at the time. We had a great meeting, and they said we took it through our book committee, and we want to publish your book. Well, you'll be hearing from us. I went back home. 2 months went by, 3 months. So I called one of my friends who worked there. I said, "Hey, man, what's going on? I haven't heard from him." He said, "But I hate to be the one to have to tell you." He said, "But we had a marketing meeting on your book, and the marketing director said they didn't want to publish your book because they were afraid of that if they published your book, that one of your friends would promote the book by the name of Oprah Winfrey." And so that's why they didn't publish the book.
Okay.
On
Listen, I heard you tell this story the other night on the other thing, and the question that I wanted, because I'm still, it's over my head. I don't get it. What was the problem? What were they suggesting was the problem with Oprah promoting the book? Would that not generate more sales that they would benefit from? What was the problem with her promoting the book?
Well, let me say, well, one of the reasons it comes back to, again, some of the things I mentioned in my message. We are very closed sometimes, and our system, we see building relationships as fraternizing with the enemy.
Oh, so she was the enemy.
Yeah, well, anything other than us is the enemy.
Oh, that brings us to our doctrinal triumphalism. Let's can we make that pivot? Can we?
Well, wait.
Oh,
Before you make the pivot, I just want to tell you how it all ended. I said, well, and I tried the other publisher we have on the West Coast, and they didn't have any interest either. So I went to one of the largest Christian publishers in the country by the name of Tyndale.
Heard of them.
Tyndale,
wow, how about that?
Tyndale took a look at the manuscript and said, "We want to publish this, and we want to give you $100,000 advance to publish this book." And I was almost giving it to our publishers for free. But I'm just sharing that. I'm telling the truth, so I'm just sharing as some people like these truths to be hidden. And by the way, it has something to do also with openly discussing these things. There are many people who would rather keep them under wraps and just don't talk about it. But I have found that Jesus himself never worried about the negative impact that some of the things he would share in terms of the impact on the faith of some people, because he was too direct. I mean, this is the same. And if you ever have any trouble understanding what I'm saying, read Matthew 23. When you read Matthew 23, you will see what Jesus was saying about the leaders and the experiences of the leaders in the church at the time. He said, "You go to the ends of the earth to make new disciples, new proselytes, but when you're through with them, they're twice the child of hell that you are."
My God.
That's not the kind of language you think would come from Jesus. But he was that direct at times.
Yeah.
And you would think, Wouldn't that, compromise the faith of some people who heard him say that about the system? But no, Jesus was direct. And I want to say one
Yeah.
last thing, and then we'll move in any direction you want to move in. But when Brinklow was my very first church, and this was 1978, and it was a church of 50 people, and the Lord allowed us to build a ministry there at that church. Well, at one of my sermons, I was talking about some of the perspectives that I had that I thought the church needed to focus on and church needed to do. I guess I've been doing this a long time. And one of the older pastors, who was a member of the church in the GC actually, came up to me after and said, "That was a wonderful sermon." He said, "I'm now 23 though, right?" He said to me, "But let me tell you something." He said, "You got to earn the right to say some things."
Mm.
I've never forgotten that. So
Oh
now
my.
I'm almost 70 years old, 12 years from
Must
80. If I haven't earned the right to say
come on
something
now.
Come on.
My,
Come
my,
on.
my, my,
Come
my.
on, preacher.
by now,
Mm.
right? You
Wow.
Now,
understand what I'm saying?
you,
Yeah.
But it's never to
you,
condemn, but always to
mhm.
challenge.
I,
Before you speak there,
yeah.
Asim,
Go ahead.
the book. We had one of our viewers ask, "Is the book available today? What's the title?" They are interested
Yes,
in that series.
yes. And by the way, Oprah did do an interview on the book.
Praise the Lord.
On her show called Super Soul Sunday. The title
Uh
of the
huh.
book is Your Best Destiny, Becoming the Person You Were Created to Be. It's available
That's
on
right.
Amazon.
Your
And
best
and
destiny.
basically, here's the premise of the book. When God created us
Mhm.
in his image, he created us to resemble, reflect, and reveal the character of God. It was amazing to me in this interview that I did with Oprah on Super Soul Sunday. She read the book and she was there saying, now I see this thing that we
Yeah.
were created to resemble, reflect, and reveal the character of God. She said those very words. And
Wow.
and
Mm.
and and so this concept that because of sin, that Ellen White says that image, the character of God in us, was almost obliterated. She says
Mm.
Satan was successful in
Mercy.
almost totally obliterating it. And one of the reasons that Jesus came to earth was not just to rescue us
Come
from
on.
Mm-hmm.
sin, not just to redeem us, but he also came to restore us
Mm.
into the
Mm.
image and character of God.
Wow.
He came to
That's rich.
restore us. And that's what it should be going on in our churches. This
Right.
process of helping people to understand, oh, I can be more like Christ. That's why it's crazy
Yeah.
where she says, for example, um, until the character of Christ is perfectly reproduced in his people, only then will Christ return.
Yeah.
So there's a work that
Powerful.
needs to be going on, and so they can get it on Amazon. And when it says your best destiny, one of the things I shared on the Oprah show was you are living your highest destiny in the moments that you most reflect and resemble and reveal the character of God.
Mm.
And and as you grow, you are
Mm.
becoming you are becoming the person God created you to be.
Wow.
Powerful.
That's awesome. Well, Elder, I think it's just a wonderful thing that you have now, through your efforts, allowed, and through the Holy Ghost leading, has allowed the Seventh-day Adventist Church to publish something through Tyndale. that, and, and
Uh, I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
tried, man. I tried. You know,
And perhaps the reason that they may have felt some kind of way is that you were offering them to publish something that they own for almost free rather than free. Listen, I'm being a little facetious there, but I did want to circle back to a comment, and then we'll move on. And by the way,
yeah,
before I give my comment, I want to give everybody an opportunity again to do that thing right now because there's a clip, there's a couple of clips we're going to show shortly
Okay.
from the sermon.
Okay.
But
Let's do it.
Dion, before
Let's
we
do
get
it.
to that, and I'm going to make my comment, and we'll maybe discuss that for a minute, but I want to give them time
Yeah.
to do this. So Dion, what do they need to do right now? We got
Listen,
154 people watching right now.
let's raise this number, man. Let's raise it. Raise 147 right now. Let's raise it. Look, it's time to share. I'm telling you, it's time
Got
to
to do
share.
it.
Let's get right here. Let me tell you something. We're talking to Dr. Wintley Phipps. He's talking
Okay.
about some of the concepts that he mentioned in his message, conflict of interest. And I mean, he's just talking about a whole lot of stuff, man, that's really relevant. It beats the heart of where we are as pastors, as ministers, as churches. So look, you want to share this now because we're going to go even deeper into this subject. So please share right now. You got 148 people. Can we share? Can you take some time right now? Right now, 150. Okay. Do I see 151? Can I get 150? Oh, now we went back to 149. Come on, y'all. Let's share. Let's share, please. There you go.
Let's do it.
Come on. There you go.
All
Good
right.
stuff. Good
All
stuff.
right.
I was not intending to make that hard break right now, but since we're here, listen, we Pastors Roundtable. I know some of you thought that we had disappeared, that we had stopped. We were only taking a little break, and we are back. Roger, for anybody who missed, we referenced a discussion, a show from earlier. If people want to get that, get a hold of that and want to watch that, people may know that Dr. Phipps is a alumnus of Pastors Roundtable. If they want to find out what he shared and what he's shared with us before on Pastors Roundtable, if they want to view or watch any of our previous episodes, how do they do that? What's the best way for them to do that? And then one more thing, Raj, there may be some people out there who are appreciative of the ministry of Pastors Roundtable, of what we're doing, and some people ask us, how can I support you? How can I help get you to do more of what you're doing? Tell us, Roger, how can people find a way to support Pastors Roundtable or to dip back and find out any more of some of our previous conversations?
Well, the easiest way is to go to the website, theprt.live. Theprt.live. You will gain all of the information there, all of our previous episodes from the beginning while we were in COVID to even today will be on that site.
Wow.
There are show notes on each show, so that if there are links we talk about, they're put right there. If you want to support us, to be a part of the PRT family, and you love what you're seeing here today, and you want to see more innovation on PRT, at the bottom of the website page is the support link. You can go right in there and you can support us in the best way you feel comfortable in supporting us. We want you to know that ministry, I mean, the gospel is free, but ministry does cost. So we're not really saying what you have to give, but if you feel that God has blessed you to stumble on or to connect with Pastors Roundtable, and you want to support us to be able to do some innovative things. We have done a number of things over the years. We're trying to do some more things, especially towards the end of this season. Please support us the best way you can. And on YouTube, you can like, you can subscribe. Then you will always know when we go live. On Facebook, you could like and you can share. Those are the ways you can support Pastors Roundtable.
All right, good stuff. All right.
All right.
Well, listen, let's bring Pastor Phipps back and let's jump in. We've got just about half an hour left before we get in. But before we get into this clip, I wanted to reach back into a comment, Elder, that you made that just kind of you were quoting an older pastor who responded to the issue of the book on the character and the issue that we don't produce materials and Bible studies focused on the character of God. I think what I recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the response was, we don't do that because other churches do that. There's
Right.
plenty of other people, and I'm assuming they're talking about other denominations and other groups. And that I was listening to that, and that thing hurt me, and it hurt me because of this. And I think we've all been guilty of it to some extent.
But
When we
can I
talk
tell
about
you?
go ahead.
Yeah, I want to speak to what you just said
Yeah,
because
go
I have. Hmm? I'm sorry.
go ahead.
I've been blessed to be around a lot of denominations.
Mhm,
You know, I traveled for 25 years with Billy Graham. You know, whether
mhm,
it's David Jeremiah
mhm.
or my friends in Dallas, Texas, big churches. I've been around. What I'm trying to tell you is those denominations don't do it either.
Mercy,
Mm.
They don't have. But
mercy.
thank God, thank God, thank you. Forgive me for interrupting you, but let me tell you, the sad part about this is I have read extensively and have done research extensively on the character of God and growing to become more like the character of God. No other writer in the history of the earth has had more to say with as much depth and clarity about the character of God and becoming like the character of God than Ellen White. I
Wow,
want you to know,
wow,
if
wow.
you go back and read now, pull up any book she has written, you will see this theme of growing to become more like the character of God in everything that she has written. You will see that word character just keep popping out at you. And the point I'm making is I believe it's a lost opportunity for missions and evangelism for us that God gave us this amazing gift. There's no denomination. There is
Yeah,
no
yeah, yeah.
denomination
Mercy.
that has as much material about the character of God. And again, let me just show you two quotes. She says, "If the truths you believe, the doctrines you believe, do not transform your character, all the truths you believe are of no value to you."
Wow, wow.
That's what she said. She says that those principles of the character of God form the foundation of the continuing education of the angels in heaven. That's the
Wow.
curricula angels have been studying throughout eternity, the character of God. And she said it ought to be the foundation of our study here on earth. You're not going to find that in any denomination. No other denomination has written that. But we so I'm just saying it's a missed opportunity for us because we could put something out there to shake the world.
Yeah, that's
Thank you for
powerful.
letting me say that.
I think that what I wanted to kind of highlight in my disappointment in the statement was
Yeah,
that if we say that character is that which we do repetitively, right? That our character are those actions and those things that characterize who we are,
yeah,
then when we teach the Sabbath, he went in on the Sabbath day as his custom was.
yeah.
That if we were to teach the Sabbath and not extract the character of God from it, and we isolate it and make it seem like it stands apart. If we were to teach how God deals with sin and the sinner is part of his character, so that
Yeah.
in that process we would talk about hell and hellfire and death. Those are ways that God deals with sin and with sinners in an effort to win them, not to estrange them. We could take every part of our what quote unquote doctrine and theology and
Absolutely.
show the character of God through it, but we tend
Absolutely.
to treat
Mm-hmm.
them as simply intellectual, informational, doctrinal points or bullet points, rather than to try to show the beauty of God's character through these things. And it's all there, as you were saying. Just
Pastor Paul, buckle your seatbelt for a minute.
all right,
Okay?
here we go.
Buckle your the Word of God says that the Sabbath is the sign between me and thee.
Mm-hmm.
We often
Yeah.
interpret that as it is the sign that
Me and them.
we are his special people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But he says the Sabbath is the sign between me and thee, that I, the Lord, doth sanctify thee.
Yeah.
Now get this. Ellen White says the Sabbath, yeah, and this is all from my study now. I've
Uh-huh.
done 20
Uh-huh.
years of study. She said the Sabbath is the sign of sanctification.
Okay.
And then she defines
Mm-hmm.
sanctification as harmony and oneness with the character of God.
There it is.
So the
Yeah.
Sabbath is really supposed to be a
Mm-hmm.
sign of a people who have character that
Come
is
on
in
now.
harmony
Yeah.
with the character of God. It's not for informational purposes or
Come
to
on now.
make us
A checklist of rules. Yeah.
so special because we are the ones who know it's sundown Friday to sundown Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's not the purpose of it. And yes, you are
Mm.
absolutely right, my brother. I now preach almost every sermon I preach. You will hear me
Mm-hmm.
having as my theological center the
Mm-hmm.
character of God.
Yeah. Good.
Mm.
Man, powerful
Awesome,
stuff.
awesome, awesome.
Powerful
That's
stuff.
Listen,
what's up.
Okay.
we're gonna make a little twist, and Anselm, you take my question number 4, but I want to set up the clip. We're gonna go to clip number 2,
Yes.
TJ,
Good.
and we're going to
Okay.
talk about this. You talked about this before, but Lord have mercy, when you dropped it in Southwest region, it reverberated throughout every single regional conference and state conference in the
That's
North
right.
American
Wow.
region.
State
Let's play
conferences
the
were in
clip.
on that stuff too,
Talk to
Ellie.
us.
Yeah,
Talk to us.
play the
Talk
clip.
to us. Yes, sir.
The second issue contributing to our collective mindset, it is this: how do you win native-born Americans without alienating the immigrants who in many instances have become the financial and spiritual backbone of what is left of the church? The Caribbean, Western, they don't want to address it because they're doing good. They're getting more power in church. Come on, somebody. Native borns don't want to address it because they don't want to be anti-immigrant. That's right. You got somebody listening to me. But listen to what I'm about to tell you. 10% of all black people in America are immigrants to America. And if 90% of your church or conference is made up of immigrants, that means that you are getting 90% of your members from 10% of the black people in America. And no matter how culturally comfortable you have become, listen, if you don't realize that if you don't fight to win native-born Americans in the church, that means you're going to lose your own children.
My Lord, my Lord. Woo!
Ay, 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 ay.
Hey,
My,
now,
my, my.
I noticed that you all had you titled this program, Did He Say That, right?
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that what you titled?
That's
That's
it.
what we titled it.
Okay,
That's it.
well,
That's it.
I got to tell you, sometimes when I hear a sermon and excerpts, I want to change that title to, Did I Say That?
My
Oh
Lord, my
my!
Lord. Rooster, they
Wow!
weren't ready.
No,
They
Did
weren't
I
ready. They
really
weren't
say
ready.
that? Yeah,
You
but
said
no,
it,
that's
hey,
Elder.
heavy
You
stuff.
said it.
and it's really a testimony to me that God was directing me, because
Mm-hmm.
when I was up at 2, 3, 4 in the morning just praying and writing, those were the thoughts that God put in my heart to share, and it has been so amazingly well received. it's like it struck a chord. The president of the conference that I preached at, and by the way, I am perfectly resigned to the fact that that might have been the last camp meeting I ever preached at.
Time will tell.
Okay.
Time will tell. Time will tell.
Because
Yeah.
but coming back to that issue, we have when at the end of it, you heard me talking about it. We need to fight. What I mean is, we need to try to change this trajectory and change the order of things. And by the way, it's I've been asking for leaders to lead on it. Some people think, well, what can we do about it? It's such a difficult thing to address. Well, and they say, well, the members got to do it. No. The leaders have to put it on the agenda, bring in members if they need to, but this is this is something that we need to address together. And I'm encouraged by what I'm hearing, that there are some leaders who are saying now, really, the members are asking us to address this. I will say to you, I've spoken to a couple of conference presidents. My heart is so heavy to tell you this, but we have conference presidents who realize the truth of what I'm saying, because they're losing their own children to this
That's right.
church.
That's right.
Wow.
And their grandchildren may not even know what a Seventh-day Adventist is. You understand what I'm saying? And if anybody you love your grandchildren, you don't want that to happen. And so I'd love to address any questions you have around this. But you heard the statistics. The statistics are real.
Yes.
We in some of our conferences, particularly in the North and in the South, only we're getting 90% of our membership from a small group of immigrants. And yes, the immigrants, thank God, have been the backbone of what is left of the church. What I say that, because look, all of our church, everybody on this call, if we went to church on Sabbath morning and all the immigrants stayed home, some of us would have 5 people.
Well, hold on. We got 3 Trinidadians and a Jamaican on this call right now. If we go put that out there,
yeah,
But Elder,
it was brought out.
I hear what you're saying. I mean, I've pastored in the Northeast. I've pastored in the South. I was even I have, and I've done youth ministries in the areas where I've pastored. And you are so right. The young people who were born here and have immigrant parents, sometimes even in their own homes, there is this tug of war. And the moment the young person reaches 18 and can make their own decision, they're gone.
Right.
They don't even want to come to church. They don't want to get involved. And so what we do, we go back out and we try to bring more immigrants in, because that's the culture we know. But what are some of the things you talked about? 90% from the 10%. What are some of the things you think we can do to make this change? Because obviously we're not doing it.
Well, here's the change. The only change is that we need to, just like you strategize to go to missions in a foreign field, and you train people. We send people to Andrews to train, to go as missionaries, right? Well, believe it or not, I believe we need to strategize, and we need to be creative in how we approach it. And again, I don't have all the answers. One of the podcasts that we did, the ministerial director of the conference that you were in, right, Pastor Wade?
Yes.
the current ministerial director, shocked everybody really on that podcast with some statistics that conference in the Northeast has 175 pastors on its payroll. 175.
Mm-hmm.
7 or 8 of them are native-born African Americans with African American lineage.
Wow.
You said 7. 7? Is that
7.
what you said?
Yes,
Yeah.
7 or 8
7
of them.
Hmm.
of
So
175.
I'm saying to you, if you want to do incarnational ministry, meaning you're going to have to become what the people you're trying to reach, right?
Hmm.
When
Okay.
you don't have when you don't have one African American church in all of New York City, and you're comfortable with that, I think that there needs to be some leadership uh, on that issue. Um, it is there are a lot of challenges, and there's some people who say the challenge is too big, and there's nothing we can do about it. Some also say, now get ready for this, that it should not be a burden placed on the current members who are immigrants to reach African Americans.
Mm.
Okay. I got some questions on that, but go ahead. Finish
I,
that.
I,
Because
I,
and because they say the African Americans that we have, they're not even capable of reaching their own people. So why are
Mercy.
you going to put that burden
ooh.
on immigrants? Well, finally, and I'll let you get to your point, but I think it's all of our burdens. First of all,
Mm-hmm.
the regional conferences were not created to be an oasis for immigrants in America, even though many of the early
Mm.
leaders were
Hmm. Yes.
immigrants.
Yes,
You know,
indeed.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, they
you
were.
know, Peters and
Hmm.
G. Peters
Mm-hmm.
and the Bradfords. They're Barbadians. You know what I mean?
Asians. Yep.
And Phipps, the name Phipps, Sinclair Phipps, and J. Malcolm Phipps. That's Trinidad
Hudson.
and Nevis. But one thing I did not see, and I never saw it, even the first president of Lake Region was an immigrant. What we didn't
Mm.
see was their focus, and of course the times were different, their focus being making or being comfortable with the church as an immigrant church. That they were reaching out to native born African Americans. And so I don't know
Mm.
if you knew about that, but I just wanted to
Hmm.
share that with you.
Yeah. And
Matter of
by the
fact,
way, the
I went to Oakwood. I went to Oakwood because I realized as becoming a minister, I would actually have to pastor African
Right,
Americans, and I
right,
could
Mhm.
not learn about the culture. The first time I heard gospel music was at Oakwood,
right, right,
and I was
Oh
right.
20
my.
some years old. I was
Yeah,
20 some years old. So
yeah,
there has to be, I think what you're saying is there has to be a deliberate, intentional
Strategy. Yeah.
decision to say
yes,
we have to reach African Americans.
right.
I,
And I believe that the the mission heart God has given to immigrants are that they are ready to take on that mission with
Mm,
all the
mm,
challenges, with all the struggles. And let me tell you what I mean. I've been sharing about my wife's story. My wife's grandfather was a slave. You can't get any more dad in the world African American than my wife. Her grandmother, her father, by the way, my wife's father was born in 1882.
Mhm.
mm.
And his father was born early in the 1800s, a slave. Uh, my wife grew up in a very typical uh, African American home, but in a home that was pummeled with a lot of the challenges that many African American homes deal with. The fussing, the cussing, the shooting, the stabbing, the liquor, the gambling, the drugs. My wife saw all of that growing up. But when she was 3 and 4 years old, she lived next door to an immigrant family from the Bahamas, the Forbes. She lived
Yes.
next door to the Forbes. And from she was 3, 4, 5 years old, they would take her in. They were trying to win the whole family next door. But they would take her in to spend the weekends at their house. They bought her little church dresses that they kept pressed and cleaned and hanging at their house. So if she wanted to wear those pretty dresses as a little girl, she went to Sabbath school. She went to church. But when she was away from the fussing and the cussing and the shooting and stabbing, all that went on, she'd see a family praying together, saying grace at the table, bringing in the Sabbath. My wife learning from an immigrant family to sing, "Don't forget the Sabbath." You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
And a dream was born in a little girl's heart. Please God, that's the kind of home I want when I grow up. My wife told her mother as a little girl, "Don't pierce my ears, because one day I want to become a Seventh-day Adventist."
Wow.
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 You understand what I'm saying? So, but all of that was because of the missional heart and spirit within an immigrant family. Now, I know it's not as easy to do it today as it was then, but still, I believe that immigrants will be willing, just like you're an immigrant, and and I'm an immigrant, and we're ready to take on the challenge.
Yes.
We just don't want to see. Oh no, put it this way: we don't want to accept that the future of this church in the regional work will be only immigrant based.
Yeah.
That is not the future I believe God intends for the regional work.
I need to stir this pot just a little bit before our time gets all the way away from us.
Okay.
This is a very complex issue. I think many of us realize it on its face, but I think the deeper you dive into it, the more complex it becomes.
Yes.
I am not an immigrant, but I am a son of an immigrant,
Yes.
and I am a son of a native born. I am both.
Yes.
I have a mom who was born in Birmingham, grew up in Chicago. My father was born in Grenada, grew up in Trinidad. They had a little love connection thing, and boom, here I am. Did I grow up in an immigrant home, or did I grow up in a native born home? Which culture was dominant inside of the home? Or was there one that was dominant? Did I have a little bit of both? And we have so many of our audience and filled in our churches that have their feet on both sides of that. It makes it very hard for us to categorize or to descript a particular church. So take this for instance, and Elder, you and I have had this conversation before, but here's a church that we look at as a Haitian church or a Jamaican church. You've got homes in there with some of them have a 2-parent home, and those 2 parents have 4 kids that were born here. What is the culture of that church? We're calling that church an immigrant church. But if you were to actually find out who in that building was actually an immigrant and who was born here, you may find that even though we call it an immigrant church, there may be more native borns in that building. And yet there may be still a culture that presides that doesn't take that into account as to where they were born. But it begins to shift. As we all know, that thing begins to shift with each native born generation. Those cultural trappings tend to shed and move out throughout the place. Here's the other thing I think we got to keep it, and I'm going to come back to that. The other thing that we've got to keep in mind in this conversation is while we are having this conversation based on our particular context, similar discussions are happening in our Hispanic communities, similar discussions at even a more alarming rate are happening within our Anglo Adventist communities. If you were to go to the seminary today and find everybody who looks like they are of an Anglo native persuasion, you talk to them and you start hearing an Eastern European accent or
That's
some
right.
other
Wow.
accent that even our pastors who are coming out of our seminary who look like they might be simply American, Anglo, or whatnot, the larger portion of them, and I don't have this specific stats on that, but I suspect that the larger portion of them are not native born Americans, that even in our Anglo church, that this is an
Yeah.
issue that we are all facing. So here becomes the problem then, and I'm going to make somebody mad at me, I think, probably. So Elder, here's what happens. Let's take I'm going to make up an imaginary church. I'm the pastor of an all. Y'all give me a let me make up no, I'm gonna do it. I'm not
Jamaican.
gonna make up anything. I'm a pastor of an all Jamaican church, or dominantly Jamaican church. In my neighborhood has Hispanics, it has Haitians, it has Anglos, and it has African Americans. How does that church maintain, and my Jamaican church, if we know our Jamaican church, that tomorrow is Jamaican Independence Day. Come on, Dion, where's your colors, brother? It's Jamaican Independence Day, and I had folk in church today dressed in their green and yellow and black and everything, and I felt like I was slipping because I forgot or I didn't know. How do I tell that church, who's very proud of their Jamaican heritage, this is part of our identity and who we are. Let's move to an African American church. We are very proud of who we are, and it shows in our worship style. It is evident in our cuisine at our events. It is evident in our style of music, in our expression during worship. How do I take those things, who I say those are things that help identify who I am, and then tell a church that they must curtail, or they must, maybe not curtail isn't the right way, but we'll use that word, or we must tweak those things to make our presence palatable? Is that the word I want to use? I'm not sure. But that my church becomes missional to people outside of this local church, the walls of this local church, so that I can communicate the gospel to them in a language that they can understand. That becomes that. So what that looks like is I'm asking that African American church to shed some of their African American identity in order to reach these people. I'm asking this Jamaican church to, instead of doing ackee and saltfish every Sabbath and rice and peas, I'm asking them to do some collard greens and cornbread, some burgers and fries. And that may look like I'm telling that Jamaican church, you're too Jamaican. Or that black church telling them that you're too black or you're too African American in order to reach these people. See, this becomes an enigma that begins to how do we address this issue with reaching the people who are not like us in our immigrant nests. How do we get them to do that without telling them that you are shedding some of your own identity? Because you know how we're going to refit. What I got to change my music style to reach them? No, I don't have to. That's a hard row to hoe. How do we fix that? What do we do with all that?
Well, the first thing we have to do is dialogue.
Okay.
Second, we have to do is build relationships. In other words, I tell people all the time, the reason I can speak the way I speak, even though I do come from Trinidad, that's where I was born, grew up in Montreal, and I was searching for my identity, but I was on the hockey team. They made me goalie, which is the equivalent of Jamaican bobsled, right? But I come from there. Let me tell you, the cultures can. The reason that you have to have dialogue, because you may have to prepare how to relate to people of different cultures. I mean, Paul talked about doing that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You may have to become some to win some, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so your family's from Trinidad, and by the way, I know, I have a hunch that your home there was a dominant, strong man from Trinidad in your house, right?
You have a hunch.
Yeah.
That's my hunch, right? But where we're from in Trinidad, there's a thing in the culture, and we'll admit to it, that gives you permission and license to make fun of people you just met and people you don't know.
Mm.
Literally, you can meet
Yeah.
someone for the first time, and it's not cause for a fight, and say, "Hey, boy, how your head so big?"
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You can't bring that
No.
into an American. As a matter of fact, I had a pastor here, and uh, his wife said last week. His wife said, "Oh, that's where that comes from." She didn't know about that, so she went. She said she went to a predominantly West Indian church, and for her first Sabbath as the first lady, somebody pulled the hat off of her head. Let me see your head. You know what I'm saying?
Whoa.
Oh my.
It, yeah,
Oh my.
it's a thing. Uh, uh, um, for example, when I left Trinidad in 1965, I went back for my first visit in 1968. I went back in my mind as a tourist. I'm no longer a native. I'm kind of smelling myself. Okay, I bought a flowered tourist shirt, and I'm wearing short pants. I had a Polaroid camera hanging around my neck, and I had on
My
dark
Lord.
glasses, trying to act the part of a tourist, right? But I'm riding the public bus to the western part of the island, to Carenage, they call it. And I noticed a fellow at the front of the bus. Every few minutes, he'd look up and look back at me, and then just shake his head and said, "Oh."
Wow.
Like he read what was going on. He'd look back at me and say, so when it got time to get off the bus, he stood up in front of all the people on the bus, and he looked at me and he said, "Hey, boy, what happened with them dark glasses? You're a welder?" In other words, you were given permission to make fun of people. You didn't know me, right? But I'm saying there's some things culturally you have to dialogue, and
Mhm.
you have to educate. Stokely Carmichael, who coined Black Power, was from Trinidad,
Trinidadian. Trinidadian.
right?
Yeah.
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 But what happened is you have to develop relationships, okay, and you have to. One of the things I believe immigrants, West Indians, need to learn more of is the history of the struggle of African Americans in this country, because
Mm-hmm.
they
Mm-hmm.
need to admit that many of the open doors they have walked through
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
were open because of
Yes.
centuries of other people who were
Yep.
born in this country, who marched, who
Yep.
bled,
Mm-hmm.
who
Mm-hmm.
died. It was not just
Mhm.
your talent and your intellect that opened those doors for you. You,
Mm-hmm.
you, you,
That's right.
it was made possible because some amazing sacrifices were made by people born in this country, and
Yep.
we don't have a good sense of that, a good enough sense of that to appreciate it. And for me, that's one of the reasons I talk the way I talk, because since I was a teenager, I traveled with Jesse Jackson. I I
Mhm.
I I, I learned about the struggle of African Americans in this country and I
Mm-hmm.
learned it from some of the greatest icons of the civil rights movement. I'm singing over the bedside of Ralph Abernathy before he died.
Wow.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Rosa Parks. I'm serenading Rosa Parks at her 77th birthday. When I sang at Congressman John Lewis's funeral,
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
uh, I, I mean, any gospel artist, right, would have been honored, would have been humbled and honored to be asked, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm getting on the elevator to go to the rotunda of the Capitol to sing. A lady gets on the elevator and she says, "You don't remember me." I said, "No." She said, "I was Congressman John Lewis's chief of staff 30 years ago. He died about 80 something years old. So when he was 50, she said, 30 years ago, he asked if you would come and sing at his 50th birthday party." And
Mm.
Wow.
he never forgot it. He would always tell us you're one of his favorite singers. And so when the family chose somebody, it was because of those relationships. And
Relationships.
you understand? So I think, you know, relationships are key. And there are a lot of other things. And we cannot come up with all of the answers on our own.
Right.
But our leaders need to convene. Our leaders need to have a symposium. Our leaders, I believe, need to come together and say, let's, by the way, trust me, if there was a financial crisis in
Oh
the
man.
regional world, you wouldn't have to be asking for meetings.
That's right.
You understand? We would be all over that. We would be jumping on it, and we
Right.
would use what I call a medical modality. We would assess, we would diagnose, we would prescribe, we would implement, we would fix that. If there was a doctrinal crisis, we would
Right.
fix it. We wouldn't sit around saying, "Oh, well, nothing we can do about it." No. And I'm saying this is
Mm-hmm.
something that will give us. God will give us the wisdom, the creativity to reach the majority of African Americans or native born Black people in this country. And that includes our own children as immigrants
Right.
and grandchildren.
Excellent.
Well, Doc,
Excellent.
let me tell you something, Doc. We just appreciate your
Mhm.
wisdom. I mean, coming on this podcast, giving us a perspective on how to reach people, right? Because that's
Yeah.
the mission of the church. We
Yeah.
appreciate that. As we end, and I know, listen, we more conversations need to be had, and I think you
Hour and a
mentioned that
half went
between
quick,
our
boy.
leaders, and I know our pastors. But what can you say to the members that are sitting in the pew, that are working hard, the laity? What can you say to them about this issue? What advice or recommendation do you have for our church members as we deal with these issues? What can they do? Because we got to collaborate together, right? What can they do?
Well, yeah. Well, it's multifaceted. I don't think there's any one thing we can do, but I would first say we need to learn more about the struggle of African Americans in this country. You know, I preached this morning, my sermon was on compassion.
Mhm.
And God helped me to see we value passion more than we value compassion.
Come on. Come on.
Wow.
Mm,
Wow.
Come
And
on.
That's real,
and
though.
and and compassion is when you understand and you act because you understand the struggle, the difficulties, the challenges that someone else, the struggle that other people have
hmm
had, right? So we need to imbue, inculcate, to help uh, our own members to have a better sense of the struggle of African Americans and Native born Americans in this country. And by the way,
Yeah.
it's different than in the Caribbean. It's different. And here's what I mean by that. You know, there were 12 million slaves taken from Africa. 10, 2 million died
Those
in the journey. 10 million survived. Of the 10 million, 7 million went to Brazil. Brazil has the
Mm.
largest grouping
Yeah.
of Africans from the diaspora. Only of the 10 million, only 384,000 ever made it to the United States of America. All African
Wow.
Americans came from 384,000 slaves. But in the Caribbean, we were the majority.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? We were the majority.
Yeah.
We were able to have a sense of seeing leaders, leadership. We were we were able to eventually run our country, get emancipation from colonialism, right? And so you're in the majority, but it has not been that experience here. African Americans, Native born Americans have had a fight and a struggle for all these years, and we don't understand it like we should. So I
Right.
think that we need to do that. And then we also, I think, if you have a good relationship with any of the leaders in the church, pray with them, beg them, ask them to convene, ask them to come together, and I believe they will, because they're men of good hearts. They're just trying to figure out politically, okay, how do I do this without angering this constituency or angering this group of people? Uh, that's the last thing they want to do, is to be divisive in any way. And so, but I would encourage them, if you're asking what members can do, they'll listen to you. If you ask them, please, our church should not be a church where our children and grandchildren don't see a future in.
My Lord.
Wow. Got you.
Yeah.
Got
That's
you.
good stuff.
Got you.
Thank
Got
you
you.
so much, Doc.
Wow.
Thank you so much, Doc. Wow.
Well,
Can I
listen.
ask
Good
you
stuff.
something before
Good
you
stuff.
go? Can I ask you something before we go? I do this a lot. The three of you, what's your big takeaway? Each of you, you can just say it in 30 seconds, 60 seconds. What's your big takeaway from our conversation today?
For me, the biggest takeaway is the fact that we need to dialogue. We need to come together. We need to talk about our issues, where we are, and not be afraid to put it all out there, because we need to understand each other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, on the issue of the conflict of interest, I know we hung out there a bit, but my mind will still spin on that. But I would agree with my colleague there that having like just the dialogue with our people, not just our leaders, but also with our members on how are we going to do this together? Because I tend to I would challenge some of the thoughts I've seen in the chat, and then I think even you, Elder, a little bit, by saying that we can't do this without our leaders. Most of us who are pastors, we have to do a whole lot. We got to make some bricks with no straw. We're used to having to go it alone in so many areas, particularly when it comes to evangelism, that I do not feel like I have to wait or count on my conference administrators or whatever to agree. I have people that are on the ground, on the forefront of evangelism with me right here, that I think some of those conversations have to begin and start there. And if we can do it here in this local spot, then that might encourage or motivate or inspire somebody else to do it there. I think we do have to work from both ends, from top up and bottom up, but I don't believe that I have to wait at the
No,
local level to be able to make a
that's
difference and to begin having those conversations. So that was a great takeaway for me.
Right.
right. Okay.
And for me, I with my colleagues, the conversation, but to know our history, to know the history, to teach the history. Because
Right.
when people try to take away your history, then you're lost and you make decisions because you're not informed. And so knowing the history, teaching that history, collaborating on that, I think is going to make a tremendous difference when the immigrants are here, and as they understand the culture of America and understand the culture of African Americans. Knowing the history will make the immigrants more compassionate, more open. And by the way, Elder, a lot of the immigrants that are here, they left their country a long time ago, and when they go back to the country has changed.
Yes.
It
Yeah,
has
that's true. That's
changed.
true.
And
That's
and
right.
and I'm saying that because
We're not going
it's
back.
interesting. But it's not going back. And so what some of our, and I teach this all the time in my church, what some of them have in their minds on how church should be when they go back
Right.
to their country, it's the
It's not that.
past because the
Yeah.
country has moved on from that, right? So
That's
again,
true. That's
knowing the
true.
history, collaborating, and I think that we'll have a better way of evangelizing the people in our community.
God
Listen,
gave me something this morning in my sermon, and that is my sermon is titled the the greatest expression of your love is your compassion.
Mm,
And God gave me a quote. We we cannot be successful in doing evangelism if we don't first have compassion.
Yeah.
You can't go you can't go with a tract in hand if you didn't go yesterday with a helping hand,
my Lord,
mm,
my Lord.
right?
Wow.
Before
My,
you do evangelism, you have to demonstrate compassion.
mhm.
And that and you can do that as an immigrant. You can show compassion and
Yes,
understanding and
yes,
love even when you don't understand the culture, the language, the music, the styles. You may not understand it all, but if you have compassion,
hmm
That's huge.
God will open the door for you to be able to do evangelism.
wow.
listen,
Elder,
that is true. That is
Pastor,
true.
Dr. Wintley Phipps, all of that, we have been thoroughly blessed by your presence and your sharing with us
Yes,
today. We are well beyond our end time, so our apologies to our audience. But not only do we want to thank you today, Dr. Phipps, we want to thank our audience today. We've had a
Yes,
great audience today. I know we didn't get
yes.
to all of your comments and all of your questions, but we see them rolling through. We know that you've had great dialogue with each other. We ask you to share this conversation. Somebody else needs to hear it. And we have seen you in the chat say over and over, we need a part two. Well, we actually knew that we were going to need a part two. So we have planned a
That's right.
part two and a part three. So
That's
for
right.
the upcoming 2 weeks, we're going to carry on, particularly with this conversation with the immigrant issue, the immigrant development or evangelism process within the church. And then there were two elements of Pastor Phipps' sermon that we did not address at all today. One of them was the first part of his sermon, that camp meeting sermon, where he addressed people coming back to church and why, those reasons that we didn't get to address that at all today. And the second thing that we did not address at all was the issue of choosing leadership, of how we
hmm
choose leadership in the church. And I don't know if we're going to be able to get you back for either of those discussions or that discussion, but we'll talk afterward, Doc, because we would love to at least get that
hmm
your input on that, because we didn't get to discuss those with you, and we've got some other guests lined up to tackle those in the couple of weeks ahead of us. But we look forward to having those. We want to invite you, our audience, to make plans to be with us. Now, I do believe that next week's conversation is going to be on Friday night. Is that correct,
Night.
gentlemen?
Yes,
correct.
yes,
That's
All
yes,
correct.
right.
yes.
Yes.
So the conversation on the immigrant versus the native born issue is going to be on Friday evening at what time, fellas? What are we doing? Is it 9 o'clock Eastern?
I, b- I believe it's 9 o'clock Eastern, man.
9 o'clock
I think
Eastern.
it's not
So those of
9
you on the
p.m.
West
Eastern.
Coast, you'll
That's
have
right.
a little reprieve from it being too late for you. But on the East Coast, we're going to begin at 9 o'clock on this Friday night, and you don't want to miss that as we continue delving into this topic.
Right.
All
Well,
right,
listen,
Roger.
we're just so
Roger.
excited. We don't want to end. You can tell that we're even lingering longer. Dr. Phipps, thank you so much. I don't know how else to say. Thank you so much for your boldness, your courageousness to share with us issues we need to be dialoguing about. And I want to say to Octavia, who shared in the chat that we need to start working. Well, the dialoguing is part of the work. And so we are hoping that the dialogue would not be the same, but will become very didactic as we're talking with each other about this issue. And so we want to thank you for joining us at the Pastors Roundtable, where we aim to
wait,
help.
Raj, I'm sorry. Right before you get in that spiel. All right. Hey, everybody got to thank TJ. TJ's been our engineer, our producer in the background.
yes.
Just give a shout out to
Yes,
TJ in the
TJ did a
background
great
there.
job.
Thank you
Yes,
so
yes,
much,
yes,
TJ.
Can I ask TJ to do something for me? Because some of the greatest wisdom come from the people who have been listening to this podcast and people who have put comments in the chat. And if he can just make sure before we sign off or something, just capture those down and copy and paste whatever. I would like to see the wisdom from the people who are listening.
We'll make that happen, Elder. We'll make that happen. We'll make that happen. So, if I could get this wrapped up again, as we pull into the gate, and we bring the steps up to the door. We want to thank each and every one of you for joining us today at the Pastors Roundtable and partnering with us to help keep ministry relevant,
resourced,
and real. God bless.
See you next Friday.